So just to introduce Tony Bowen, he's with us here. His partner, Mike Nixon, is going to be joining us remotely. Tony and Mike are our engineering team with Kim and Creed, who the village has worked with for over the last 20 years, more or less, on various improvements to the system over the years. But more importantly, they've worked on the scope, design, the engineering, and permitting for the wastewater treatment plant expansion. So want to have Tony and Mike sort of give an update on where that sits. And then we'll segue into with Withers and Ravenel on the CIP and the rate study. So Tony, one of the things, just to give you a heads up, we talked with our federal lobbyist was on grant funding sources. And I pointed out the timeline of this construction project over a 36-month, 3-year period. So just to recognize that and how we might try to navigate through that. But
yeah. Okay, thanks, Chris. And Mike is going to talk a little bit about the schedule as he gets deeper into that. So I'm going to give a quick control. Okay. I want to give a quick overview, some history of the plant, just a few minutes, and then I'll turn it over to Mike, who's been handling the detailed design and permitting of that. He can talk more in depth about things Chris mentioned, plus fall schedule, et cetera, permitting. So I guess as a starter, kind of a comprehensive view of your system, you have sort of 3 parts. You have the collection, you have the treatment and disposal. Your collection system is what we refer to as a low pressure system. Every individual unit tends to have a small grinder pump, pumps into a common force main, a number of common force mains that all discharge through Timber Creek Pump Station. That resides as your primary collection point for all wastewater on the island. And then that pumps into your wastewater treatment plant. After the treatment process is completed, it then goes for disposal on the golf course and some infiltration basins. So just kind of a 5-cent overview of what kind of system you have. It's pretty straightforward. A lot of these systems at the coast. So a little background on the plant itself. So it was originally constructed in 1995. It had a capacity of 200,000 gallons per day. 2001, it was expanded to 400,000 gallons per day. And then in 2016, we actually did a D-rate on the plant. And that's a little odd. You typically don't see those sort of things. The reason that was done is that the plant was designed for a certain level of wastewater strength. And over time, that wastewater strength increased and the plant was having problems meeting the permit parameters. So we have a permit that says when you treat it, it has to meet these limits before you discharge it. So we had 3 options. One was to try to do some fairly extensive upgrades to the plant to maintain the 400,000. We also looked at, well, if we're going to do that, why don't we go ahead and expand to 650, which is the island build out, or is there an interim solution? So looking at the cost of that, looking at the average daily flow on the plant at the time, the highest month you had was about 200,000 gallons a day. We chose to go ahead and move forward with a smaller interim solution, which allowed us to meet permit limits, but it reduced the ability of the plant to do it to about 300,000. Again, your peak month was 200, so you had about 100,000 gallons left of capacity. Again, 2016, we're 10 years later. I think that was a really smart move. It's building a lot of infrastructure that you're not going to get any value out of it and have to replace. So it was, again, kind of an odd thing to do. We don't typically see that, but I think it's the right move for the village at the time. And so that's why today you have a plant that's actually rated at 300,000 gallons per day. And, sort of 2 parts to treatment, the treatment process itself, and then how do you dispose that treated wastewater effluent. That's often a bigger challenge than the wastewater treatment plant itself, and very much at the coast, very much a challenge to do that. Fortunately, we've already plowed that ground, and that's not so much of a challenge. But just again, a little bit of history of how we got here. Originally, when the plant was built in 1995, there were 3 what we refer to as infiltration ponds or infiltration basins built on the golf course. I want to say there were a whole 14 or 15. I can't remember exactly, but and essentially the way those work is the treated effluent. The wastewater has already been treated. We just need to dispose of it, discharge it to those ponds or basins, and it infiltrates the groundwater. Very common system, permittable through North Carolina. We've got a number of those.
For council, the 2 red ones are the one's on 14, and then the orange one is 15.
Right. So fast forward to 2014, the one on 15, the orange one, was starting to have some problems. It was not performing well. It would flood during rain events. it's in kind of a low spot. I think the ridge across the island was causing some problems with it. So working with the club, realizing that, look, we needed to do something with that infiltration basin, provide some other means of disposal. So ultimately what we did is remove that basin from the permit. The club was going through a redesign of that other hole. We worked with the architect, reshaped those basins and had them remain just in a little bit different configuration so we can maintain some capacity for the basins there. And also in conjunction with the club, again, we started thinking, well, if we're going to go through all this effort and re-permit this, can we find a means to go ahead and permit the entire 650,000 gallon build out and disposal and have it under permit? So we went through that process and ultimately ended up, the big yellow circle is also golf course, but we were able to permit golf course irrigation reuse on golf course. So now your total 650,000 gallons per day is handled via those two infiltration basins in red and golf course irrigation. And just, again, just from a historical perspective, but that is a huge checkbox. To be able to have your disposal in hand, worry about doing your treatment plants, a separate issue, but disposal is one of the biggest challenges we faced here in the coastal counties. So, so ultimately, your current plant's at 300,000 gallons per day and is nearing that point in time where we do need to be looking at capacity expansions. But you are in really good shape on your disposal system because you do have the 650 already in place.
Chris, I may not need questions, but have we made sure that we're going to continue to be within that limit, given the golf course redesign that's going on right now?
Yeah.
They're not going to mess with those infiltration basins and they're not going to change the irrigation to cause a problem.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I figured you had.
The only thing we did discuss was, they're going to be redoing the lines for the irrigation system that spray the reuse. And
Right.
we just want to make sure all the irrigation heads are in the proper places as permitted. So they're not spraying on residential properties. So that was the only.
They don't want that in because that's waste.
Right.
So it's actually a really good process. So you think, we pull water out from wells, we treat it, people use it, it goes back to the wastewater plant and returns to the island. So it's sort of a life cycle of water. So we keep all the water on the island. It's a really, really positive thing. Any other questions on that? I'll turn it over to Mike. Mike, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Is he able to run I can run it for him. Or...
He did have permission to share screen if he wants.
Well, if you can run it, that's fine. Oh, you want me to share?
If you want to.
Okay.
He's got the same PowerPoint, right? It's just the next slide.
Yeah. Hold on, I just gotta put it in.
I mean, I can run it, Mike. Just tell me when to change it.
Yeah, I think that's probably easier because then of course, I can't see it, but if you're on the current facility, I can speak to that, Tony.
Hang on, Mike.
Let me know. Okay. All right. Okay, we're back. To be able to be, there.
Okay, Mike, you're on the current. Can you see it, Mike, or you need me to tell you where you?
I can see it. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So this is the current wastewater treatment plant that's currently permitted, that 300,000 gallons per day. So just a few key things to point out, because I'll show the difference with the expansion, is the majority of the liquid treatment process is in the three tanks on the left-hand side. SBR stands for sequencing batch reactor. That's the type of wastewater treatment process that's currently out there. So those are the three largest tanks out there doing kind of the bulk of the work. Also, we've got that pre-EQ. I'll kind of speak to that with the next one. And then the bottom right is the biosolids part of the treatment, the digesters there. So we've got to do some expansion to the digestion for the overall treatment capacity as well. So if you want to go to the next slide, Tony. So the scale's a little bit different on this, but again, I'll start on that left side. So the 3 tanks in green, those are the existing SBR tanks. So the volume of those are not changing to increase the treatment from 300,000 to 650,000 gallons per day. One of the things that over the past few years working with the village on how best to do this expansion is we finalized on an intensified treatment process that allows more treatment in the same volume. So that there's a couple benefits there. You don't have to build more concrete tankage, which is expensive. And then the site is also relatively constrained as far as, where do you go outwards and build more tankage. So that's a really nice solution. And the process still kind of works similar to the existing process as far as the sequencing process itself. But that kind of one thing I wanted to point out is you can more than double the treatment capacity for the kind of the heart of the plant with the existing SBR tanks as they are. So a couple other things we're doing, kind of that light brown is the pre-equalization. So the wastewater flow pumps up to a screen and then drops into the pre-EQ. We're actually converting one of the existing digesters to be a second pre-EQ tank. And so that just gives more storage capacity before it goes into the treatment area. So with storms or other high flow events, it's just giving ability to store a little bit more wastewater and prevent any challenges there with really high flows. And then what we are adding is on the right-hand side, which is kind of the southeast part. There's not a north arrow on this, it's cut off, but so the digesters, we have to expand that. There's not really an intensified process like we could do for the liquid treatment. So we're adding 2 digesters there. And then the light blue is a new building that'll house the blowers for the various treatment tanks. One thing with the blowers is we've got criteria for noise limits on those blowers as it stands. You can stand next to one of those blowers without hearing protection on, the ones that are designed for the expansion. And then it's going to be inside a building and on the opposite side of where those existing blowers are. So I know there's some current challenges with noise out there. That should pretty much eliminate the noise problems with the blowers. We do have to put a new generator in that's up in the upper right-hand corner there. Again, that generator has noise requirements in the specifications so that we're not causing noise problems with that. But overall, another thing I want to point out, you can see the colors are kind of where we're doing improvements. Other than the existing filters, we're pretty much touching everything inside the wastewater treatment plant. So the existing concrete tanks will be reused, but they're getting repairs and coatings. So really, with the completion of the expansion, the facility will get a brand new refresh and be ready for many years of future service without leaving old components out there that won't last. You can go ahead and go to the next slide, Tony. I just threw this in here. We decided the design that we used is actually a 3D modeling program to design the treatment plant expansion. And we use that really just especially with an existing site like this, we're working within existing constraints. We're using existing tankage or other constraints that are out there. So this helps us make sure that there's not conflicts during construction. You can go ahead and flip it to the next slide so it stops. And then we shared this with JP and his team so they can see what it's going to be like to maintain and operate this equipment. Is there enough room to get to things? Can you pull this pump? Can you access this piece of equipment? So we use that 3D design to ultimately provide a better product to operate long term and try to minimize any conflicts and questions during construction. So next slide. So where we're at permitting wise, we submitted the permit to expand the treatment capacity, which is the terminology is the reclaimed water generation portion of the permit. So that was submitted in January for permit modification and authorization to construct. We anticipate that that's I'm guessing about a 6-month process. So hopefully in July we'll have those permits in hand. This is that intensified process that I mentioned. The state has permitted one other treatment plant that has that process that does surface water discharge. The reclaimed water is a different branch, so this will be the first permitted under the reclaimed water branch. So anticipate there may be a couple questions during that permitting process, but we're kind of guessing that it'll be in that 6-month time period. And we tried to provide as much information as we could with the permit application. And then we have a permit for the Timber Creek pump station improvements as well. So both of those got submitted in January, and the Timber Creek permit, we may see that later this month or next month, get that permit. It's a little faster process. We also provided the plans to the planning department for cursory review. So when construction starts or when the contractor's on board, they'll submit for a building permit. So we sent those to the planning department ahead of time to see if there's any questions or try to address anything before that comes up after the contractor's on board with the building department. And then that's all the permitting that needs to be done before construction. Everything else has been handled up to this point. This is our estimated cost based on our 90% design that we completed last September. So our September number was about 38 million. And then we gave a year-over-year projection with a 4% estimated inflation increase. So what we've got targeted right now is starting in July of 2029. So that's in fiscal year 30. So that's where that 44.5 million comes from, is projecting up our estimate from 38 million from last year. Next slide. Chris mentioned the construction schedule. So this is super high level from our point, just trying to really estimate how long construction will take and work around that. The plant will have to undergo partial conversion in the winters and then come back in some cases we'll be operating with both processes for 2 summers over that 3-year construction progress. So I put this together just to try and make sense of all that and starting July 2029, you would be up and running and undergoing performance testing in the summer of 2032 and wrap up at the end of that year. Next slide.
So Mike, you want to talk a little bit about what happens in the summertime periods?
Sure. Yeah. I figured there would be questions and we can go back, but I can talk to that. So, actually, I kind of go through this. So, they're going to get started, and then there will be a period where they can build that new blower building. They can do some of the improvements at Timber Creek Pump Station. And build the tankage for those new digesters without impacting the operation of the existing treatment plant. It'll be, they're going to be working in the site there, but they're not going to have to take anything offline to do some of that work. So that's the first part of it, is to do what they can on the sites without impacting it. So then the first time that they would really have to take one of the SBR reactors down or one of the existing tankage would be October of 2030. So after a year on the site, building those structures will take some time, and that's a significant part of it. So then that winter of 2030 and then 31 is where they would take one of the SBR reactors offline, take one of the digesters offline. As it stands right now in the winter, those are taken offline to just go down to 2 reactors anyway. So they would have a chance to make that switch over, bring that stuff back online, and then have that next summer, you would have a combination of existing SBR and the new Aqua Narita process running simultaneous. And then again, that summer 2031, work on what they can without impacting the plant. And then that next winter in 2031, 2032 is where they would do the rest of the conversion and switch over the rest of the tanks and pull equipment out, recoat, get everything back started up and go for a full startup in the summer of 2032.
Any questions? I guess the general approach is that, we have to be operational in the summertime. So we're doing a lot of work in the winter, which extends the contract schedule. If we built this like straight up on the mainland, we could probably do it in 24 months. But it's going to get extended just because of the summertime flows that you have.
Yeah, Mike, you have what I consider a real, basic construction path here. And one of the things we're dealing with is when we look at the financing of this project, you have an overlay to your construction schedule, which would represent, you got 44 million when we're all done, but you know what, we need, 10 million in the first or 30 million. Do you have the same type of schedule for money?
Yes. Yeah. Actually, the very last slide has that.
Okay.
I can skip we can skip up to that now if you'd like. Actually, I think you had to take it out of presentation mode. I put it as a hidden slide, but it's there.
Yes,
I shared that. I shared that with Aaron. Aaron could put.
Like another side of that is, for us to be conscious and preparing for the cash flow, but also in discussions, is there any breakdown of this process that, that we can be seeking money from different sources, targeting specific elements and trying to get the money for those simultaneous, building up to the overall project cost. I'm not saying it properly, but, in earlier conversation, we were talking about with lobbyists and securing money and grants and realizing that a lot of the grants that we looked at in the past were grants for $3 million, $4 million, and to be thinking along the line of, 45 million or something like that is unrealistic. But is there any way to look at this project in increments?
Mike, I think we talked about, typically when you're funding, whether it's grant or loan, they're funding the entire project. Right? There's an end result. So to fund part of it, I think this would be a challenge. We did think, and I think I'm hearing you right, we did talk about trying to do a partial design that gets you from 300 to 450. I'm not sure that it doesn't make sense.
No, that didn't make
sense. It's a way to do that.
So when I look at a project like this, no matter what happens, if we're looking at 3 million, 4 million at a time, it doesn't matter. We still have to have money available for the full project.
Yeah.
But in the, securing that money and then, stepping back as well, look, if we can get a grant for $5 million, we already have that secured. Maybe we can start chipping away at this thing over the course of a number of years. Does that make sense at all, or am I just?
It does, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, one clear thing that can be broken out is the Timber Creek pump station. So that project or that part of it, and it's on a separate site. It's not directly related to the treatment plant.
2.3 million, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a big number in the scheme of things. You can see right here, 2.3 million.
Right, like we need it.
Yeah.
And the plot said, like 2 years to get it.
But as far as the treatment plant itself, you saw that we're pretty much touching the whole thing. So
Right.
to really expand that capacity, you gotta do all of it. But this was something that we shared with Chris a month or two ago to show what, based on that same schedule, like this is what the cost you would be getting contractor pay requests, based on where they were at completion wise through the project, kind of the cash flow through the project, so to speak.
Yeah, there are grants also and loans for rehabilitation. And Mike, I think some of this would qualify for rehab, right? We're recoding
Yes.
structures, replacing existing equipment. So there could be an avenue to try to promote or to submit for both expansion and rehabilitation. It could be one pot of money. It could be two different pots of money.
Right. Okay.
But there are certainly some avenues to look at there.
The rehabilitation and what was the other? Expansion.
Yeah, sometimes some of the grant monies, unfortunately, it's either one or the other. They typically will pay for rehabilitation. Expansion, they feel like that needs to be paid for the people that are expanding it.
Right.
Not the burden on taxpayers sort of thing. But there's possibility of combining the two. Because it is an older plan, but it's 30 years old, 35 years old now.
What is it? I think I understood that it's actually cheaper for us to build in the existing plant and expand it than it would be to build completely from scratch. Is that right?
Absolutely. We're able to basically dump the plant in the existing footprint. It would be probably twice this if you built outside.
Mike, on this table, is that first start date correct? I thought we bumped it to 7/3/29.
Yeah, Chris, I'm sorry. It's the same thing, just a year prior.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
We're looking at 28, yeah.
And then I had a question as
So
well
you
on
say,
this.
Scott. So you say, Scott.
Yeah.
Like, we need to start it. But yeah, we believe we can.
Because again, Ferguson Group
29,
said 2 years, right? So it's time.
But it's actually 2029.
Yeah.
Well, so along those lines, when is there an assumption or requirement as to when we say go to hit these dates?
No, I mean, we get the permits in hand. We're basically shovel ready.
Right.
No, I'm sorry. I meant the other way. To hit these dates, like when do we have to tell these guys, Kim and Creed or whoever it will be, that we're going to start?
How long is it gonna take to mobilize?
Yeah, there'd be a bid process. You have to go through a formal bid process. If we're starting in July 29, Mike, we're probably advertising the first of 29, January. I've seen that schedule,
Yeah, actually the schedule that we had discussed before was advertising in October of the prior year. So advertise, or even maybe as early as September, but September, October of 28.
right.
And especially, unfortunately, we've seen cases where you have to rebid. So give enough time to go through that bidding process, potentially rebid. And then there takes a little time to come to terms with the contractor and have everything lined up so that the contractor can have notice to proceed in summer of 2029.
Yeah,
And
also, all right, I was gonna say, if you do have grant or other funding, there's mechanisms once you take the bid that you have to get their approval as well. So that's sort of part of the reason for backing up into that September, October timeframe.
yeah, so I don't want to drag us all through it right here, but Chris, I assume that these guys will give us some counsel on where to get grants and how to get grants and timing about those grants as well. But not perfect counsel, but based on their experience, they'll have some insights.
Yeah, that's just, we got to continue to converse with them on all of this timing and not to mention, I'd throw this in there that Zach and I have got to figure out the financing aspect of it too, regardless of what we may or may not get with grant funding that will require probably some form, will require local government commission approval, and it is utility fund enterprise, so I don't know that we have to do a bond referendum. Guy just left, but
If you do
anyway,
revenue bonds, obviously.
revenue bonds, yeah. So I just, Lord help.
I had a question. Do these cost estimates take into account what I'll call the bald head factor? You know, all the barges and the scheduling and the delays and
Yeah.
and the work hours and all that bald head encompasses.
Tony, you want to go to that slide? It's 11 there.
It was in the footnote at the bottom or the talking
Yeah,
point.
it would kind of skipped ahead, but that 38 million that we came up with at the end of last year factors in these, which I would call the same thing, bald head factor. So you got to transport equipment and personnel either to and from, or some are potentially staying there, during the week, and then just that construction schedule where it's going to be, they're going to have to get a lot done with the flows down in the wintertime and adjust in the summertime, and then contingencies. So unfortunately, contractors don't assume risk, they price risk. So they're going to have to assume that, some days they're going to be ready to go to do a concrete pour and the weather doesn't allow the barge to make that trip across, and they've got to abandon that and potentially come back and try and do it another day. So there's definitely going to be some of that built into the bid price. We have talked through some of those large pours. I mean, these are big tanks. Those two new digesters that need to be added. And we have had a conversation with the transportation department as far as kind of giving priority for the concrete pours and scheduling that ahead of time so they can get trucks across, because we're talking about getting 20 plus concrete trucks over back and forth on a day to do a large concrete pour. But
We did meet.
Mix it ourselves here?
Yeah.
Whatever the materials.
To do on-site pour is just too massive.
Yeah, okay.
And we did meet with Chad and Bond and had a good conversation, and they acknowledged, that if they got to run extra barges, like they'll do,
They'll be done with the golf course by then, so that'll be helpful.
We could look at a temporary batch from.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing that was brought up and has kind of been, nothing's been solidified, but there was some talk about potential securing a staging area near the marina in Southport. As equipment and deliveries, materials and equipment come in, have a place for that to be stored on that side potentially, and it'll just make the logistics a little bit easier. And then it can come across as needed. As
Yeah, I
well
was
as
gonna ask.
having storage on the island as well.
Yeah, it'll be important to us to know what kind of staging requirements you're gonna need, just because obviously we're an island, we don't have property. So if we have to be securing property even on a temporary basis, yeah, that's
Yeah.
line we didn't need to go down.
Yes, it's a big challenge, no doubt.
And I have a corollary question, and that is, does your schedule also allow for delays that, a storm or weather doesn't allow the barge, whatever, various delays?
If there was something major in one of those winter times, that could probably throw it off pretty good. I mean, I guess I will say, fortunately, the hurricane season is during that summertime when they're not going to be doing significant, or at least they're not. It's not so much on the critical path of the construction schedule. So there's less chance of a hurricane or tropical event, I think, delaying the schedule significantly during the summer. But if there's something that comes up either late in the season when they've already started to start doing conversion, that could potentially push the schedule out a year, because you're working around having to work within that October to May timeframe to do the significant work.
Right. Well, thanks so much. Anybody else have any more questions? Okay, hey guys, thanks. That's great.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.